Pixar almost has 30 movies, so let's rank them all. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and welcome back to another video. So today I've got a big old tier list ranking of every Pixar film from my least favorite to my favorite. This, of course, includes the newly released Inside Out 2, which is in theaters now. I have a review that I'll link up above for my full in-depth thoughts on that film. But there's 28 Pixar movies. I got them all on this tier list, and before I dive into it, be sure to hit that like button and comment down below your ranking of all the Pixar films. Where does Inside Out 2 land for you? Subscribe and hit that notification bell to help reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. It would mean a lot. And if you want tons of extra exclusive content like live Q&As, reaction videos, commentary tracks where you can watch movies and TV shows with me, you can join my Patreon for $5 a month. Your support over there truly does mean the world and allows me to continue making these videos. Anything goes a long way over there, so consider joining the Film Stock Patreon community today. Without further ado, I say we dive into this tier list. Like, imagine I turn into the Pixar lamp and jump on over to that tier list. Alright, so the tiers I have are S tier, A tier, B tier, C tier, D tier, and F tier. Typically in the past, I've written in words like best of the best, really good, solid, etc. But today I wanted to go straight up classic S through F. These movies are fully randomized. Again, there's 28 of them, so you might want to get your popcorn ready because this could be a longer video. But kickstarting this list, we've got Coco. Remember me. Every time I hear that, the tears swell. This is a beautiful movie from Pixar. Some of their best pure animation work I've seen. Like, the colors in this film are popping. It also celebrates Dia de los Muertos, Day of the Dead, and so it's a culturally rich film with a banger of a soundtrack, a great plot twist as well. Like, this is borderline S tier. I'm going at top of A tier right now for Coco. Really well done Pixar film, and I tear up every single time I watch it. It's got that classic Pixar gut punch, rip your heart out moment near the end, and Pixar excels at that. That is far from the last time I will mention a Pixar movie has made me cry. Moving on, though, we've got Monsters University, a criminally underrated prequel. This movie gets way too much hate for some reason. I still remember seeing this one in theaters being gassed up because I love Monsters, Inc., and we'll talk about that movie later. But Monsters University, cleverly done prequel, shows us Mike Wazowski and James P. Sullivan in their college days where they're trying to learn to be scarers. Uzma Kappa ends up being the fraternity they join, and we even get to see a young Randall. This is a prequel done right, in my opinion. Never understood the overwhelming hate this one gets. I'm going B tier with Monsters University. Really and truly fun, enjoyable prequel, and I'm down for a Monsters, Inc. sequel. I saw recently that Pixar's trying to develop ideas, but I know they have that Monsters at Work series on Disney+. I've never watched it. Maybe that's worth a watch, if you will, but I don't think it focuses as much on Mike and Sully. I'm down to see a post-Monsters, Inc. movie with Mike and Sully returning. Next, we got Finding Nemo. This is classic Pixar right here. In fact, I still remember seeing this movie in theaters. I put out a video recently talking about my earliest movie memories. Finding Nemo is one of those. I still remember I was like 3 or 4 sitting in the theater watching this movie, and the scene where they're in the depths of the ocean and that fish with the light that sticks out in front and lures Dory and Marlin in, that scene burned into my brain forever. Finding Nemo is a timeless tale. It's one of Pixar's best films, but I've seen it so many times that I'm almost burnt out on it. And I think that can happen with certain movies, for me at least. If I've seen a movie 100+ times, which is the case here, it can sour the experience ever so slightly for me. The movie is still near perfect, but I'm only gonna go top of A tier right now, just because personal preference. I have a lot of other films that I'm reserving for S tier. Finding Nemo, elite classic Pixar, but I don't enjoy it as much as some of his other films right now. Next, we got Soul. This movie came out on Christmas Day during the pandemic, and honestly, I've never been a big fan. It tries to be super deep, posing these questions about one's greater purpose in life and the impact you'll leave and the legacy you'll leave behind. But then the middle act of the movie becomes this body swap comedy in a way, and it just was so tonally jarring to me that it took me out. The score is beautiful, some of the animation hits, and the music is delightful, but Soul's a movie that I rarely find myself thinking about or revisiting. Fully aware it's a hot take, and I know a lot of people are big fans of Soul. For me, I'll go C tier with it, and I could almost go D tier with Soul, but I have to appreciate the music, the score from Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. It's just a movie that didn't land with me, honestly. It's kind of average at best. Next, we got Monsters, Inc. S tier. You guys already know this is a top 5 Pixar movie, and it's never coming out of that top 5, I don't think. It's one of Pixar's greatest concepts. Mike Wazowski and Sully are that duo. Not only is the movie hilarious, but it was the early days of Pixar where the animation is a little dated, but that adds to the charm in a way. And the concept alone is awesome. You've got these monsters who power their entire city on the screams of children. You take this age-old concept of kids being afraid of the monster in their closet or the monster under their bed, and you make a whole compelling plot about it. You've got me hooked. Randall as well, voiced by Steve Buscemi. Great Pixar villain. I mean, he's a little slimy guy, isn't he? You know, But man, do I love me some Monsters, Inc., and Boo and Sully's relationship is the heart of this film. Again, pulls on the heartstrings, and I have to shout out the Yeti. If you guys have ever been to Disneyland, California Adventure, I've only been once, maybe twice in my life. They have the lemon ice cream. It's great.
No, don't worry. It's lemon.
And next we've got Inside Out 2, the newly released Pixar film that is a sequel to Inside Out. My full review, again, is linked up above and down below. I really felt as though this was a return to form for Pixar. It's been a few years since they've had a real winner, and this was a home run hitter in my opinion. Fired on all cylinders, it brought back the original emotions, but also expanded Riley's mind, introducing anxiety, embarrassment, envy, these more mature emotions, and Riley herself is at a new stage in life where she's going through puberty and experiencing this change. That can be overwhelming. This movie explores going through puberty. It has universal appeal because of it, as we've all grown up and gone through those changes as a person, as we've gone through the teenage years into adult life. We all will undergo that if you haven't already. The movie's filled with humor that works, and it really touches on the idea of identity, being comfortable and confident in who you are. We all have the complex set of emotions that make us wholly unique, and we have to embrace that whether we love or hate certain aspects of ourselves. Inside Out 2's got a very powerful message that everyone should check out. It's beautifully done animation, like Pixar continues to impress in terms of the technical animation in their films. And because of that, Inside Out 2 is an A-tier film. I'm gonna put it right here for now, behind Coco and Finding Nemo. But Inside Out 2, in terms of sequels, might be some of, if not their best work. Next we got Toy Story 4, a movie that when I initially saw it, I convinced myself that I really liked. But in reality, it's not necessary. It's Woody's story, not Toy Story, and that's fine. It's like a nice little epilogue for him, but the classic gang of toys takes a real backseat here, even Buzz Lightyear, which is a crime in my opinion. It still has some of the Toy Story charm to it, but a lot of the film just feels empty because this is post-Andy, and the Toy Story trilogy was so perfect in and of itself. It's like, why make this? Why try and taint what we had with that trilogy? I also was kind of annoyed with a lot of the new characters they introduced. Gabby is like the main villain. Didn't vibe with that story at all, but I do appreciate Buzz and Woody's friendship. When that is the focus, I was in. I will say Toy Story 4 is C tier over Soul. Like, the more I think about it, the more it falls in the average to side of Pixar. When I originally saw it, I thought it was great, but now, not so much. Next, we've got WALL-E. This is the first steaming hot take in this video that will upset probably most of you watching it. It's D tier for me. What? I know. Not a WALL-E guy. I find the movie to be really hard to sit through. I get what it's going for. It's telling a story about how we gotta take care of the environment and the future could be pretty bleak if we, aren't environmentally conscious, but I just never vibed with this one from when it first came out to now. Whenever I go watch it, it's like I'm trying not to fall asleep watching it. There's not a lot of dialogue. It's got cute moments, but I think WALL-E would function better as one of Pixar's shorts. A whole feature film, it's just not doing it for me. I know that's a hot take. A lot of people love this one. WALL-E, one of my least rewatched Pixar films. Next we got Onward. Double hot take in a row. I'm a huge fan of this movie. It's got a brotherhood story that just hits home for me. I think it's really sweet. There's a sense of adventure. It pays homage to Indiana Jones multiple times, and as a sucker for that franchise, I was eating that up. But there's a brotherhood story here that works. It's this fantasy world that Pixar hadn't really explored. It's so tempting to want to go S tier with Onward, but I know I'm going to settle for A tier. I'm going to put it at the top though, as hot of a take as that is, even over Finding Nemo. Right now, today, I would watch Onward over Finding Nemo just because I've seen Finding Nemo again a billion times. I love that movie. I don't want to paint the picture that it's like, oh, he hates Finding Nemo. It's A tier, 9 out of 10 type movie for me. This list is based on my personal favorites, so I put Onward above it right now. Next we have A Bug's Life. It's cute. It's the Seven Samurai, the Magnificent Seven of Pixar. Nothing special. If you've seen the movies I just referenced, you know exactly how this plot's gonna play out. It's the second Pixar film though, so I tip my hat to that. It's a safe bet. That plot structure, very safe play. We've seen it in tons of forms of media, even like various episodes of Star Wars, Clone Wars. I'm gonna go C tier with it. I actually think I would take it over Toy Story 4 though. just because A Bug's Life has become like classic Pixar in a way. It's vintage, if you will. It's one of their early films, so it has that going for it. But in reality, it's a plot we've seen played out 100 different times. Next, we got Luca. This is not my cup of tea. I watched Luca at like 12 o'clock in the afternoon. I was wide awake. I was falling asleep multiple times. I had to rewind. I kept falling asleep watching this movie because it was just such a snoozer. In concept, sure, it's interesting. You've got this boy who leaves the sea and goes onto land, and his family is making such a big deal about how, hey, don't leave the sea, don't leave the sea. And then they just end up leaving the sea as well. It was like, okay, is it really that scary out there then? I have not gone back to revisit this one. I don't think I ever will. Luca, just not my thing. I appreciate how it's a different style of animation for Pixar, but it's so forgettable. I actually would take WALL-E over it, so I'm gonna go Luca behind WALL-E in D tier. Next we have Turning Red, same thing. The movies that were going straight to Disney Plus for Pixar just didn't really feel like classic Pixar at all. Turning Red is one of the more generic Pixar films we've gotten. It had none of like the Pixar feel to it, and so for that I'm putting it in D tier again, probably behind Luca. Not a Turning Red fan, and again, it's one of those original concepts that I appreciate that they, took a swing at it and it wasn't just a sequel. But Pixar had a run there where they were just doing original concept after original concept that seemingly wasn't working. Like, a lot of these movies almost seem undiscovered by the masses. Like us, people who love movies, if you're watching this video, I assume you love movies. Like, we know about all the Pixar films, but I feel like a lot of families out there in the general population just didn't watch, like Luca, Turning Red, even Soul. So, I don't know, it feels like the lost era of Pixar in a way. Next, we got the OG Cars, wildly overrated movie. I made a short, and also posted on Instagram and TikTok, and I said, pick one Pixar movie or one animated movie from each row, and I never picked Cars, and people were like, bro, how are you skipping over Cars? Talk about a movie where people are blinded by nostalgia. I think this is number one on that list. Cars is fine. Cars plays it safe. Cars is a movie that came out when I was like 6 years old, so everyone was watching it. Yes, Lightning McQueen, Tow Mater, they're iconic Pixar characters, but the movie itself is okay. It's nothing special, especially compared to a lot of the other movies on this list. It baffles me that so many people are like, Cars is the best Pixar movie, Cars is the best animated movie. Never was on that train. It gave us Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts, so I'm not complaining. Banger soundtrack, enjoyable movie. But people like to sit here and act like Cars is the best Pixar movie, and that should never be in the conversation. It's not even close to the top 10. I'll throw Cars in C tier, right up top, probably over A Bug's Life, just because I do have to appreciate, the music, the world it created, and it gave us Lightning McQueen, so, like, yes, it's iconic, but the movie itself has always just been fine. Next, we got Toy Story 3. So long, partner. This is tied with my favorite Pixar film. I'll talk about the other one later. I'm going top of S tier. Toy Story 3 hits me right in the feels every single time, caps off the trilogy wonderfully, and it gives us Lotso Huggin' Bear as the main villain, the best Pixar villain in my opinion, and as he was abandoned. He's carried that around with him and wants to take it out on all other toys to make their life a living hell, to cope with his own inner pain of abandonment. We also get a beautiful moment at the end where we see Andy playing with the toys one last time. If that doesn't make you tear up, you have no heart. It's a beautiful story that reminds you change is a scary part of life, but it's all going to be okay. It's necessary. Toy Story 3, masterpiece from Pixar. I don't throw that word around a lot. It is a masterpiece. Next we got The Good Dinosaur, our first F tier movie. Throwing it in F tier right now, The Good Dinosaur, borderline unwatchable. This is basically if you took the plot of The Lion King, threw it in a Pixar film with no heart, and said, hey, maybe people will watch it. The characters are really uninteresting, the film's just bland, and it has no Pixar feel to it. Of all the Pixar movies, The Good Dinosaur is the one that stands out as like, wait, that was actually Pixar? Like, you know how a lot of times animation studios will like have such similar styles in terms of the technical animation that you can get confused? This feels like one of those movies that went straight to Redbox in like 2012 and somehow has Pixar stamped in front of it. Next we got Cars 3. Could be a hot take here, but I think it's the best Cars movie. I don't think it's anything special. Like, I'm still putting it in C tier, but I'll go above Cars. Cars 3 is just that story where the champ's days might be behind him, but that doesn't mean he can't train the next great racer. We've seen that in the Rocky series. We've seen it in like every long-running franchise about an athlete or warrior pretty much where they train the next generation. It's a trope we've seen done in media countless times, but it works in Cars 3. There are some uplifting training montages, and by the end, it hits you right in the feels, just like Pixar tends to do. But this, of the three Cars films, has the most heart to me, which is why I have it over that original. Next we got the classic Toy Story. This is the original Pixar film. It launched this entire animation studio, and you have to pay respect to that. But on top of that, it's still one of the most timeless, rewatchable Pixar films that gave us Woody and Buzz, maybe the most iconic Pixar duo, and You've Got a Friend in Me, the banger of a Pixar song. I could go on and on about Toy Story. We've all seen this movie. It's one that everyone watched at some point growing up. But it answers that age-old question. What are our toys doing when we're not around? It's S tier, and I'm going to put it right behind the original Toy Story. I have it a hair over Monsters, Inc. for me. Toy Story is just special. Anytime I go back and revisit it, yes, the animation is outdated, especially when compared to what Pixar's pumping out nowadays, but like I've said with some of the earlier entries on this tier list, that adds to the charm of it all. If it weren't for Toy Story, we wouldn't have any of these other movies, but throwing all that aside, it has some really mature themes of envy, pride, and adapting to new settings or change, a common theme in a lot of Pixar films. It's brilliant stuff, launched this entire animation studio that's become beloved to so many, to infinity and beyond. Next we got Finding Dory. This is the sequel to Finding Nemo, and overhated in my opinion. A lot of Pixar sequels slash prequels get way too much unnecessary hate in my mind. Finding Dory focuses a lot more on Dory. She's trying to find her parents. We are at an aquarium for a lot of the film, and we get Hank the octopus, a delightful supporting character in the Pixar world. The movie's a lot more absurd than the first film, but it's charming, and honestly, I'm gonna go B tier with it, behind Monsters University. Finding Dory, way too much hate in my mind. I remember seeing it in theaters. You got little baby Dory at the beginning, so sweet, pulls on the heartstrings, of course, but Dory as a character is one of the more lovable in all of Pixar. I think it's time that we complete the Finding trilogy. Finding Nemo, Finding Dory. I don't know what the third movie could be, but bring it on. Next we have Up. S tier Pixar. I'm going behind Monsters, Inc. with it. The first 10 minutes of this film have been talked about to death, and rightfully so. It's a beautiful love story that ends in tragedy, and over the course of the film, Carl has to re-find that spark, that sense of adventure, because like Ellie always said, adventure is out there, and he finds that through Russell, a Boy Scout, who he ends up being a father figure to, so they both help each other out in the end. You've got Doug, who's a lovable supporting character, Kevin the bird, and there's even a villain twist in this film that hits. Like, people will try and bring this film down and say, oh, the first 10 minutes are great, everything else is fine. The first 10 minutes are some of the best filmmaking I've seen in animated film, period. The rest of the movie is still elite. Just because the opening of the film is super strong doesn't mean that the rest of the film isn't. Like, I don't see people saying that about Inglourious Basterds or The Dark Knight. Some films with the greatest openings of all time go on to be some of the best films ever, and Up is one of the best Pixar movies that just so happens to have 10 minutes of absolute cinema in it. Plus Michael Giacchino's score, Married Life, that track in particular, that in and of itself is a character in this film that brings me to tears every time. I cry like a baby during the first 10 minutes of Up. Next we have the original Incredibles, another S tier film, and you know what? I think I gotta put it above Up right now by a hair. I'm gonna put it right here. The Incredibles is, to this day, one of the best superhero films of the century, and I'm not just being hyperbolic when I say that. The Incredibles is phenomenal, and it's an original concept from Pixar, something they excel at. You've got this superhero family Bob Parr is just trying to protect. You've got Frozone in here, a lovable, hilarious sidekick, but most importantly, Syndrome is the main villain here, and his motives are fully fleshed out. He loved Mr. Incredible when he was younger, but then he kind of got wronged by him in a sense, and so he made it his life's goal to bring him down. He has hatred in his heart. He's coming for vengeance. He's a very understood villain. Now, sure, that trope's been played out a lot now. We've seen it in things like Iron Man 3, but in reality, it works here. The Incredibles rules. It's got that score that hits. It's a superhero film from Pixar that is a banger. It's like consensus top 5, top 10 Pixar for most folks. Next we got Toy Story 2, which almost feels like the lost child in a sense. Toy Story and Toy Story 3 are both at my top, and Toy Story 2 is not as good as those in my opinion, but it's still A tier. In fact, I actually have to go top of A tier with Toy Story 2. Again, it feels forgotten a lot of the times, but you got Al's Toy Barn, Zurg and Buzz in this film, and then of course the Prospector, Pete. He is a villain who's also very understood. The Toy Story films know how to create a very compelling villain. This is also the movie that introduces Jessie and Bullseye, as well as Miss Potato Head. So I mean, this launches the Toy Story franchise forward into what we know it as today. Toy Story 2 is a banger. It's just never been as high as the first or third for me personally. Next we have Incredibles 2. Drop the, just Incredibles. Another one of those sequels that gets way too much hate in my opinion. Sure, it's not as strong as the first. The twist is a bit predictable, but Elastigirl gets her time to shine here. It's more of her story as she's kind of taken on the mantle of main hero, where Mr. Incredible has to play dad at home babysitting Jack. It's still action-packed and introduces a slew of new heroes to the picture as the world of superheroes is expanding in this movie. And again, I think that the reason people say this movie's bad is because it's not as good as The Incredibles, but that's like saying The Dark Knight Rises stinks because it's not The Dark Knight. Like, what can reach that height, really? You know, when you have a movie that's just such lightning in a bottle, such an instant classic, anything that follows after is going to be a bit underwhelming by comparison, but it's still a great sequel in my opinion. And honestly, I'm going to throw it probably back here. I would say Inside Out 2 might be the better film as of right now, but Incredibles 2, very worthy sequel, very solid follow-up, and I am down for the third film. Give us the trilogy, Pixar. Next we have Elemental. This is a movie that I thought was fine when I saw it in theaters. It didn't really do anything different for Pixar. It played it safe in my opinion, and I haven't revisited it in a while, so I don't really have fresh thoughts on it. I liked Wade and Ember's dynamic, and there was sort of a relevant running commentary in this film, but I just don't really see myself going back to this one anytime soon. I mean, I don't know where I placed it back then. It's definitely not like an F or D. It's not S or A. It's either B or C. And honestly, it felt kind of like a middle-of-the-road Pixar movie, so I'm going to toss it like right here maybe. I would probably take it over Toy Story 4 right now. But I gotta rewatch Elemental and see if my thoughts have changed. It's been a while since I've gone back to it. Next we have Inside Out. Talk about a banger from Pixar. I just rewatched this one on my Patreon, did a commentary track where you guys can actually sync up and watch the movie with me. So if you're interested in that, my Patreon is linked down below. I got lots of fun content over there. But Inside Out has almost become classic Pixar over the past decade. Like if we're talking original concepts here, you could argue it's Pixar's best work. What goes on inside the mind of a human being, in this case, a child who has to move from Minnesota to San Francisco and experience all these new changes in life. And its impact within pop culture, but just the world as we know it, is felt. Core memories essentially came from this movie as people watch Inside Out and have like adopted core memory as a term into their vocabulary around the world. In all honesty, Inside Out 2 is S tier from Pixar. I'm putting it at the back right now just because I do prefer the films I have above it, but it's like top tier Pixar film, right there with the best of the best. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Bing Bong, maybe the saddest death in Pixar. I mean, you want to talk about getting the waterwork going for Pixar? I can make a ranking of the top 10 saddest moments, or moments that get you crying the most. Bing Bong's death's got to be up there. Take her to the moon for me. Whew, about to cry right now. Next, we've got Ratatouille. This is my favorite Pixar movie. Yep, I'm putting it at the top right now. That and Toy Story 3 have been tied, clashing between the two of them forever, but Ratatouille is the one Pixar movie that stands above the rest to me. Anyone can cook. This movie serves as a reminder to chase your dreams, never settle in life, and always remember what drives you forward and that passion that you have. Anything you set your mind to, you can achieve, and Ratatouille reminds me of that. On top of it, you've got Remy cooking for linguine. That's just hilarious by concept. And you got Anton Ego, the cynical food critic who's reminded of the beauty of life when he takes a bite of that ratatouille at the end of the film, and it's just a beautiful story. Michael Giacchino knocked it out of the park composing it. Le Festin, banger. I don't care, it's one of my feel-good songs, I'll be honest. I love Ratatouille. I'm due to rewatch it soon. It is elite Pixar, and one of those movies that I remember seeing in theaters still. I killed the man with this thumb. Theater erupted. I was laughing my butt off as a 7-year-old. Next we have Lightyear. Talk about a movie that's fallen off for me. Saw it in theaters. I think I initially gave it like a 4 out of 5. I was like, yeah, that was good. Pixar might be back. Haven't thought about it since June of 2022. 2 whole years. This movie has been absent from my mind. If that happens with the movie for me, that's how I know it's not my jam. I appreciate the concept. This is the movie that Andy saw in theaters in his world. Great concept for a movie. However, in execution, there are some reveals in this film that just make you question what's going on here, really. I do admire some of like the scale of this film. I think I actually was able to see it in an IMAX screening. Yeah, I did see it in IMAX. And it's like huge for Pixar. You really feel the scale of this world, the size of the story. But it is fairly emotionally empty by the time the credits roll, and it hasn't had a long-standing impact on me at all, which is unfortunate. I look at this tier list right now, I'm thinking honestly, like C to D tier. This is crazy, I know, but I think I have to go top of D tier, which is crazy, but I've hardly thought about this one, and that's a shame. A damn shame. Socks was the MVP. Everything else, pretty forgettable. Next we have Cars 2, garbage. I'm putting it at the bottom of F tier. Shout out Alex from the Escape Pod podcast for loving this movie somehow. I myself cannot see that. Finn McMissile, British intelligence. Fine, you know, I mean, shout out Michael Caine, right? But this movie's all over the place. All over the place. Like, Lightning McQueen still pursuing a race story, but it makes Tow Mater the main character? What are we doing here? One of the most irritating side characters in Pixar, and you're gonna give him his time to shine? It'd be like if Attack of the Clones made Jar Jar Binks the main character. What the hell are we doing? This movie tried to make Cars into some globe-spanning action-adventure spy film. Didn't work at all for me. I remember seeing it in theaters back in 2011 and walking out underwhelmed back then. So yeah, anytime I go and rewatch this one, I'm like, this movie is an atrocity. I just don't get how people could actually like this movie. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion, but it baffles me that people actually dig this movie. And then of course, there's Brave, a snooze fest. This is an F tier movie. Now it is better than the two I have down there right now, so I'll put it at the top because it gave us this quote: "If you had the chance to change your fate, would ya?" I said that all the time in like 6th grade just because it was in the trailer and the marketing, and so I thought it was hilarious, but in actuality, Brave is so forgettable. I forget that Merida's even a Disney princess, honestly. Never aspire to watch this movie again. It's basically another body swap movie from Pixar, much like the middle act of Soul, but with bears. Okay, it's pretty lifeless, honestly, and I forget it's a Pixar film. A lot of people do. A lot of people probably think this is Walt Disney Animation. Nope, it is Pixar somehow. But that does it for my ranking of all the Pixar films, all 28. Again, top heavy, but if we're gonna rank these straight up, let's just do that real quick based on this tier list. We've got 1 Ratatouille, 2 Toy Story 3, 3 Toy Story, 4 Monsters Inc., 5 The Incredibles, 6 Up, 7 Inside Out, 8 Toy Story 2, 9 Onward, and 10 Finding Nemo. Then we've got 11 Coco, 12 Inside Out 2, 13 Incredibles 2, 14 Monsters U, 15 Finding Dory. Then for 16, we've got Cars 3, 17 Cars, 18 A Bug's Life, 19 Elemental, 20 Toy Story 4, 21 Soul, 22 Lightyear, 23 WALL-E, 24 Luca, 25 Turning Red, 26 Brave, 27 Cars 2, and 28 The Good Dinosaur. Again, this is how I'm feeling right now in June of 2024. This list is always subject to change as we get new Pixar films, as I go back and rewatch them. But right now, I'd say this is just about right for my ranking. I think Inside Out 2 could definitely climb the list, but I just saw it the once, so I didn't want to put it too high just because recency bias can be a thing, so we'll have to see if it stands the test of time or not. But that does it for my ranking of all 28 Pixar films. Let me know yours in the comments down below, and be sure to hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help me reach my goal of 150,000 subscribers here on the channel. And if you want to watch movies and TV shows with me via commentary tracks, or you want extra live streams or reaction videos, you can find those on my Patreon. Your support over there truly does mean the world, so consider joining the Film Stock Patreon community today. But thank you guys, as always, for watching, and until next time, I'll see you guys later.